In this part of the video series, we're gonna make our nav links work. At the moment, they point to nowhere. And then we're also gonna add hover and focus styles to the different types of buttons that we have, like we do here. And we're also gonna implement this smooth scrolling effect that we have when the nav links are clicked. And then finally we're gonna add this back to top button that appears as we scroll a bit down into the page, and if we click it, it takes us back to the top. So let's get into it. So I'm gonna start in the HTML. So I'm gonna give these links href values. So this one is gonna point to a fragment within this page. So that's why I'm using the pound sign as opposed to a slash or a HTTPS path. So I'll say work, and here I'll say clients, and about, and for this one, contact, and here I'll add an ID of work, and for this one, clients, and for this one, an ID of about, and finally for this one, an ID of contact. And now if I head back to the browser and click the links, they take me to the relevant section down in the page. Now let's move on to implementing the smooth scrolling effect. So I'll add scroll behavior smooth in the root element. And now if I head back over to the browser and click the nav links, the browser takes me smoothly to the relevant sections as opposed to taking me straight away without any animation. So let's move on to implementing the hover styles for the buttons. So this is the hover style that we are aiming for. So to implement this, I'm gonna be using pseudo elements. So I'm gonna use after. So what I'll say is button and then after, and the first thing that we want is to have a content property, and I'm setting it to an empty string because we don't want anything. And then I'm gonna set the display here to block, and I'm gonna set the height to 100% and width to 100%. So, and I'm also gonna apply a background of white. Now let's head back over to the browser. We aren't like seeing anything at the moment, but if I inspect, and here you see that we have after appearing in the like the DOM. So I'm gonna set its position to absolute, and I'm gonna set the top to 0 and the bottom to 0 as well. And for the left, I'll say 0, and let's say 0 for the right as well. And since we have set the position to absolute, it will be by default position relative to the window and not this button element. So let's set position relative here so that it is positioned relative to the button. So here we have it. Now it's covering like all of the contents of the button. So to fix that, I'm gonna add a z-index of 1 here and the index of -1 here. So since the text is white, it is not showing up. If I set the background to pink, now the text is appearing at the top as expected. If I remove like the z indexes, it won't work. Like the after is at the top, so because it's like positioned absolutely. So I'm changing the stacking order. We're using z index. Now we only want it to appear on hover, so by default I'm gonna set it right to 100%, and I'm gonna remove the left. So yeah, now it appears outside of it. Now here I can say that overflow X, and I can set that to hidden. Now it's hidden, like it is still there, but it's hidden. So what we want to do is when it gets hovered, we want to move it back behind the text inside of the button. So to do that, we can use hover. So I'll come here and I'll say button, and when it gets hovered, target the after pseudo element and then set its right position to 0. So by default, by default it is set to 100%. So this is the right corner, and from the right it is 100%. So that means off of the entire button. So when I set that to 0, the right becomes this, and it moves here. Like if I remove overflow X hidden for now, and when I hover it, so from having right set to 100%, it moves to right 0, which is this right corner of the button. I hope this makes sense. Now this happens jarringly because we don't have a transition set, so I'm gonna do that. So transition or 0.2 seconds, and I'm gonna use this cubic bezier that I have up here in the comment. So I'm gonna paste that here, and now if I head back over to the browser, actually we don't want it over the button. We actually want it for the after. Like we want the transition to happen for the pseudo element and not the button itself. And now it moves in nicely. Let's re-add overflow X because we commented that out for illustration purposes. So now our hover works as expected for the buttons. So we also want this hover style for these text buttons. So let's do that as well. So what I'm gonna do is, because the styles are gonna look the same for, like the hover styles are gonna look the same for button, text, and the button, I'll write some grouping selector so that we can avoid the repetition. So let's come over just beneath the button text. I'm gonna move this down here, and I'm gonna add a comma. So I'm using the grouping selector here to group the styles. So both the button and button text have the same after pseudo element, and here button text, and then I'll say hover. So they get the same, like both the pseudo elements for the button and button text get the same hover styles as well. So now if I head back over to the browser, it doesn't work because we have to set position relative, z index, and overflow on button text as well. So what I'll do is write another group selector, so button, and then button text, and I'll move these two declarations inside of it, and position relative as well. Now it should work, and yeah, it works. Now one little detail that we missed is that initially the background for the after pseudo element is white, so we're gonna do that. So I'll set it to white here, and then on hover I'm gonna set it to so I'll say background, and here I'll say pink, and it works as expected. Sorry, this is the version that we're working on, and this is like the final version. So yeah, these work as expected. Now let's add the hover effect to the nav elements as well. So this is also similar in like many ways. So I'm gonna move down to where we have the nav styles, and I'm gonna say nav a, and then colon after, and we're gonna set the content to an empty string. We're gonna set the display to block, and we're gonna set position relative here to set the positioning context for this after pseudo element, so that it's positioned relative to the link. So I'm gonna set position absolute here, and I'm gonna set the bottom to be 0, and I'm gonna set the right to be 100%, and let's set a background of white color. And if we head back over to the browser, nothing shows up. So we have the after here, and we have the right. So let's set the width to 100% and the height to 1 rem or 10 pixels. So now we see it, and because the right is set to 100%, it is moving outside of the link. Now what we want on hover is when the links get hover, we target the after and set the right to 0. And now if I hover over them, it moves inside. Now it moves in jarringly, so we have to set the transition again that we did for the other button. So I'm just gonna copy the cubic bezier. So the cubic bezier is the transition timing function that determines how the transition is gonna play out. So here I'll paste it. Now it's still not working for some reason, So nav a after in transition or so it isn't supposed to be transformed. Instead, transition not should work. Yep, it works as expected. Now here, if you look closely, when it starts, like initially, the height is like 1 rem, but as the transition finishes at the final state, it is like around 2 pixels. So we're gonna do that. So I'll say height 2 pixels. Yeah, and it works as expected. Now I'll set the overflow X hidden on the link, so that like the initial state isn't visible, so hidden. And then I'm also gonna update the background, and I'm gonna set that to pink. And yep, it works as expected. Now let's add some padding bottom so that it like there is some space between these two, like we have it in the final version. So this is positioned absolutely. We can add padding here. So let's go with let's go up and pick one of the spacing, like one of the gutters that we have. So let's go with gutter XX small. So here I'll say padding bottom and gutter XX small. Let's see how it looks. It looks like it is too much, so maybe just use 1 rem. I don't think we have a variable for 1 rem, so I'm just gonna hard code it here. So I'll say 1 rem, 10 pixels. Yeah, I think it looks fine and closer to what we have here. I think here we have more padding top, so let's do that real quick. So the nav has so we have a nav height, so let's update that so that there appears more spacing around it. So nav height is 8 rem, and let's make it 10 or maybe 12. Yep, 12 looks close to what we have here. So yeah, another thing is that we change the color to pink on hover, so let's do that as well. So when the nav links get hovered, so we want to change its color to pink. So I'll say color pink, and let's add a transition to the link itself. So yeah, looks good. Now let's move on to creating this back to top button. So here in the markup, at the very bottom below the footer, I'm gonna create a button, and this is gonna have a ARIA label of, sorry, we need a link here and not a button element. So ARIA label back to top, and here we want to have this arrow up image, so let's include that. So for the source I'll say images, then slash arrow up, and for the out we can say arrow up, and let's see how it looks. So it looks quite big and we don't want that, so we want it to be around, I think, 30 pixels in height. I'm gonna give this a class of back to top, and in our CSS sorry, so below the footer I'll create a block for the back to top button. Back to top, and here back to top, and I'll say select the SVG and apply a 30 pixels height to it. So, oh sorry, we don't have an SVG element, it's an image element. So yep, it shows up here. We want it to be positioned here on the right side, and we want it to like float as we scroll through the page. So we're gonna achieve that via position fixed. So I'll say back to top, and here I'll set the position to fixed. So as I set the position to fixed, I need to give it a bottom of, let's say, we're gutter small, and right, let's use gutter small here as well. So now if I head back over to the browser, it stays fixed there. So gutter small is maybe a bit too much, so let's use gutter x small. Yep. And now let's give this pink background and this radio look. So here we can say that it is gonna have a background of sorry, pink, and I'm gonna set its display to flags, and justify content to center, and align items to center, and I'm gonna give it a border radius of 50%. Yeah, now it looks radial. Now we need to bump up its size, so we could either apply a height or width here or add padding. So let's add height. So let's go with 6 rem, like 60 pixels, so 60 pixels tall and 60 pixels wide, and yeah, it looks good. So let's make this bigger, so 40 pixels, and yeah, I think it's a bit bigger here, so let's go with 5.5 RAM, which is 55 pixels. So yep, it looks pretty close to what we have here. Let's make its positions small again. Sorry for the back and forth. And yeah, it looks pretty close to what we have here. So it is gonna have a attribute value of $top, and it is gonna, so when it gets clicked, it is gonna take us to the top. So I'll add the ID of top to the header element. So now if I click on it, it takes us to the top. Now we don't want it to be shown like when it's the top of the page, like the header. So we want it to show up when it's like the my work section. So, or maybe even better, so some sites like show it when the footer appears. So let's look into that. So for doing so, like hiding it on header and making it appear as we scroll down the page is going to be done via a JavaScript. There is no CSS way of doing that. So for that, I'm going to create a JavaScript file. So I'm going to name that index.js, and then I'm gonna include that into our page. So script source, and then index.js, and I'm gonna defer it. So defer means that don't execute it before like rendering, like parsing and rendering the DOM. So to make sure that our JavaScript is being loaded successfully, I'm gonna type in a console log here, and I'll say JS is running. And back to our browser, I'm gonna open up the console. So I selected inspect via like the right click menu and then inspect, and inside of console we get JavaScript is running. Now let's write a selector to select the back to top link. So back to top, and I'm gonna use document.query selector, and I'm gonna target the link with the class of back to top. So that should do it. To make sure that our selector is correct, I'm just gonna console log it quickly. So here we get the element, and so by default what we want to do is have it hidden. So to do that, I can set the visibility to hidden here. So now it no longer shows up, and I can let's use some JavaScript to make it appear. So we can do this via multiple ways. So window.add event listener, and scroll. So when scroll happens, we're gonna fire. So this event handler is gonna be called. So I'm gonna check if window.scrollby. So scrollby is essentially where we have like scrolled in the page. So I'm gonna check if it's greater than or equal to, let's say 900. I'm gonna select the back to top one, and I'm gonna say back to top dot style dot visibility, and it's hidden. So I'm gonna set that to visible, and let's see what we get in the browser. So as I scroll, so as the window.scrollby becomes 900, it shows up, So we want to hide it when it's like above 900, like scroll y is less than 900. So for that we can say back to top.style dot visibility, and we can set hidden. So as I scroll up it disappears, and as I scroll down it shows up again. So yeah. So now one thing is we're using a scroll handler here. So scroll event will fire whenever scroll will happen, and this is not good for performance. So let me show you. If I do a console log here and say fired, so if I open the console and if I start to scroll, you see that it fires 246 times, although we have scrolled just like a few areas. So this isn't good for performance. So instead of using this scroll handler, what we're gonna do is use an intersection observer. So if you search for MDN intersection observer API, you'll find good documentation about it. So this is how we create a new observer. So we're gonna do that. So I'm gonna remove this, and I'll say const observer and new intersection observer, and it expects like two arguments to be passed in. One is the callback and the other is the options object. So for the callback we're gonna pass it in an arrow function, and so as the documentation tells, we get entries as the first argument and observer as the second. So entries and then observer, and here we can pass in the options object, and inside of the callback, so we can say entries dot for each entry. Entry, and if entry dot is intersecting. So what intersecting would mean is that when it's inside of the viewport, this is gonna become true. We can console log in the viewport. So like this is the options object is optional, so I'm gonna remove that for now. And like we've created the observer, now we have to add it to a DOM node. So let's add this to the second workbox. So what I'm gonna do is add an ID, and I'm gonna say observer target, and I'm gonna select this with JavaScript. So here I can say const observer target and document dot query selector, and select an element with the ID of observer target, and let's add the observer to that. So we can say observer dot observe, and it expects the a DOM node. So in our case, it is going to be observer target, and let's see it in action. So in the viewport, yeah, because the second work item was in the viewport. So if I refresh, we get nothing. And as I get to the second project, it says in the viewport. So let's remove this console log, and here we can say back to top dot style VS. Not sure what VS code done there. So style dot visibility, and I'm gonna set that to visible. And if I head over to the browser and go up and refresh, so as those like the second project, like the observer target is in the viewport, the back to top button appears. So we have one problem though, so we have to figure out a way to hide this again when it is at the first project or in the hero area. So to fix that, what I'm gonna do, so we have like two ways. So one is like adding an observer to this like the first work box, and when that is intersecting, hiding it again. So that would require us to have two intersection observers. The other thing is we add the intersection observer here, and as we scroll past it, we show the back to top button. So I would say let's add the intersection observer to the header instead of having two observers. So what I'm gonna do is add the ID of, so one element can have one ID. So what we can do is just select top here, and here we can say that if it's not intersecting, then set its visibility to visible. So as we scroll here, it doesn't work for some reason. Why is that? Now let's head over to the browser, and in the console we're getting an error that argument1 is not an object. So for some reason this document.query selector isn't working. I'm not sure why is that. ID of top. I'm not sure what is going on. Maybe let's directly select the header element, and now it seems to work, but it shows up instantly, which we don't want. So entry, so what we want now is when like the header which is the target now is not intersecting, then set the visibility to visible. So if I refresh, it is not showing up, and as we scroll past the header, it shows up. So which is what exactly we want. Not sure why that top selector wasn't working. I may have to figure this out later. Like if you're watching the video and you know what I might have done wrong, do let me know down in the comments. So as we scroll back up, it stays there. So to fix that, we can here in the else block do the opposite of this. So instead of visible, we can say hidden. So as I scroll down, it shows up, and as I scroll back up, it disappears. So this is what we want exactly. Now here in the final version, you'll notice that we have a nice transition going on. So let's add that. So back in our CSS, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create two selectors. So back to top, when it has the class of hidden, so and back to top with the class of shown. So this will select an element with back to top class when it has the class of hidden, and this will do it when it has like a class of shown. Actually, we don't need the hidden one. We can just apply the hidden styles to the default state. So I'm gonna set the opacity to 0, and I'm gonna say transform and scale. Let's go with 0, and let's add a transition of 0.2 seconds. And when it gets the shown class, what we will do is set the visibility to visible, and we want to have it no scaling. So I can just say transform none, and then I can set the opacity back to 1. And here inside of our JavaScript, we can say back to top dot class list dot add. So we can add the class of shown, and here we can remove that class. So I'll copy this and remove the class. Now if I head back over to the browser and scroll down, yeah, it shows up with the animation. Now if I scroll up here and scroll past it, it shows up, and when I scroll back, it doesn't disappear. Why is that? Let's see. So I'm gonna inspect this. So here we have so we want to remove the class of shown and not add a class called remove. So yeah, remove shown. Now it should work. So I scroll down, it shows up, and if I scroll back up, it disappears. So we've got it working perfectly. And yeah, that's it for this video. I hope to see you in the next one, and make sure that you subscribe if you find it worthy, and give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.